figuring out how to see the sermon in among the microphone. We can do it. It's so good to be back with everybody. I too was gone for 2 weeks, and it feels like a very long time being on some other continent, but back and glad to be here. This is the 6th Sunday of Easter. With the disciples, we have spent 6 Sundays and the weeks between with the risen Christ, triumphant over death and all the rejection that the world and its empires can offer. It has been a time of joyful music and flowers and bells and light, Paschal candle always burning, overflowing with alleluias. But this week brings a change. Christ warns of what's coming. Thursday will bring the Ascension. Christ will stop showing up for breakfast by the seashore or dinner along the road. No more inviting curious tentative hands to touch wounds. No more appearing in locked rooms. Christ is going home to the heart of God. What do they and we do now? This year, because Easter came very late, this week also brings the Feast of the Visitation, where we remember how a pregnant Mary walked to a nearby town to visit her much more pregnant cousin Elizabeth, whose own son, destined to become John, Jesus' cousin and forerunner, is described as doing the uncomfortable gymnastics of leaping in her womb, greeting Mary and her son. So we will be reminded of how Jesus' earthly life began, just as we celebrate its culmination. And then, for me, personally, next Sunday brings the 45th anniversary. That's a very long time, 45 years, of my ordination to the priesthood. A day that was chosen specifically for its connection to the Visitation. When I was considering embarking on what was then a highly improbable path for a woman, my best friend from high school exclaimed, "Why, Rags, that makes your whole life make sense." I looked at her as if she'd lost her mind, but that is indeed how it turned out, as I moved from preparing to be a professor of Slavic languages and literatures to becoming a priest of the church. As we described it, going across the bay, I moved from Stanford over to Berkeley. Actually, I didn't move. I commuted from Stanford to Berkeley. Sometimes it's helpful to have observances tumble on top of each other like this, so that we are surprised by connections. Readings for this particular Sunday and all 3 years of the lectionary join together language about love and light and peace, all without limit or ending. They invite us into a way of thinking and living that seems at odds with much of our experience of the world. We are invited to live in love with everyone and everything because God is love. And as we sang just now, Jesus was born of that love. Indeed, everything that is or ever shall be is born of that infinite love. So that is our home, an important and helpful thing to remember when we are inundated by calls to hostility and rejection. As the risen Christ is trying to prepare the disciples to carry on without any physical form to cling to, there are words of encouragement about the Spirit of God remaining with them and with us who follow. Always important words that we can and should cling to. It is the love which remains, which connects them and us always, giving us strength and direction and hope. Love is the context, the grounding, and the goal of all our lives, singly and together. I love that graphic on our prayer page, which says, "Love heals." I was delighted to see that when I got the bulletin in Norway. and was working on this sermon. It's such a helpful reminder as we offer our prayers for people in difficult situations, for a world in so much torment and suffering, with willful disrespect and destruction. Love is not just a nice feeling, or a greeting card sentiment, or something to share with only family and friends. Love is the essence of God. Love is what brought the universe and all life into being, and what sustains it in being. And just as I did at my ordination, we've all signed up for Team Love. This is who we are all called to be and how we are called to live. Our first reading gave us the story of some of the earliest followers of the risen Christ living this out. Hearing the call of seekers wanting to hear the good news and wanting to join Team Love, and they responded by going across land and sea to share what they had learned and to build the kingdom together. They did not count the cost or the danger or the little likelihood of success. They heard the call and they answered. Then the psalm sang of peoples of the world coming together like that, in praise and service of God, the God whose love created us all. Then we had that lovely vision from Revelation, which we reference at every funeral, whether we read that reading or not. When we celebrate the lives of those who have died, we say, "Let light perpetual shine upon them." And we say, "May their souls and the souls of all the departed through the mercy of God rest in peace and rise in glory." John's vision informs that. In the face of darkness and death, we proclaim light and glory. For every funeral, we light this same candle that is lit through the great 50 days of Easter. Priests and liturgists tell us endlessly that funerals are Easter liturgies, even though we know perfectly well that we are rarely feeling very Easterish at a funeral of someone we love. What we feel at a funeral is most often more like Good Friday. There is desolation and loneliness, sometimes abandonment and betrayal. Occasionally, we give thanks because a particular death represents release from terrible suffering. But even so, the suffering itself was part of the dying, part of the Good Friday, part of the ending of a life we had rejoiced in. So our experience is an experience generally of darkness, yet our liturgy is commanded to be a liturgy of light. In the midst of very real darkness, we proclaim light, which is even more real, which will finally banish all darkness. Living Good Friday, we proclaim Easter, not merely for Jesus, not merely for those first followers, but for us and for everyone. We proclaim and invoke the light we just heard about in Revelation. And there will be no more night. We need no light of lamp or sun, for the Lord our God will be their light. Light perpetual, light that cannot be extinguished, light that cannot be hid under a bushel, light that makes all things clear and bright, light for all nations and peoples. This seems to be a very big claim to make in a world which seems to contain much more evidence of darkness and confusion than of the dawning of perfect light. We are only able to proclaim that light because we've experienced it somehow. And often our experience comes from people like Paul and his companions, who brought us tales of their own experience of God's love and light. That's part of our calling, to live in the light and love of God in a way that lets other people experience it. At the Ascension, Christ takes all that is human, that is us, into the heart of the divine, so that we can live there in that love, so that we can have the strength and vision to share it. The genius of the lectionary, which has this cycle that keeps repeating and repeating and repeating, is that each week we listen together, each hearing the same things and different things, and together hearing more. With the lectionary cycle, there is comfort in the familiarity. Oh yes, that reading again. But also, there is so often a new insight, particular to a specific moment or situation. This day is about how we, like Jesus' band of early followers, can find a way forward. The risen Christ is showing them how to get ready for their Lord to go away again, how to live on as followers without the physical presence. We live our whole lives without those fish cooked over a beach fire. How? How are we meant to keep following? Hope and love and light. We are called to hang on to what we have learned and to carry those in our hearts into strange places, like Macedonia, or like our own familiar world suddenly disrupted by behavior we have always thought impossible, with violence and hostility all around us. Hope and love and light. These are what God brought into the world in Jesus and still offers to us and invites us to offer to others, especially to those we find suffering from injustice or hunger or violence or anything that destroys their hope and love and light. It sometimes seems very foolish to venture out to oppose people or forces stronger than we feel, but it is our call to be bringers of these things of God into the darkest places, to know that we are never alone, never abandoned. As I meditated on this image of abiding love, of finding our home in love, I found myself drawn to gifts from dear friends given at my ordination, gifts which all included sleeping cats at their center. Anyone who knows me knows that I love cats. I often envy them the serenity that seems so natural to them. Like Christopher Smart's cat Jeffrey, they are all so evidently servants of the living God, duly and daily serving him. One of these gifts is a drawing of a cat sleeping on a pillow, the absolute embodiment of contentment and peace, surrounded by the words, "All that matters is to be at one with the living God, to be a creature in the house of the God of life, like a cat asleep on a chair, at peace, in peace, and at one with the master of the house, with the mistress, at home." At peace, in peace. That is what it means to have love as our home, to live in the light and love and peace, which is God. No hatred, no paralyzing fear, no need for self-protection, no need for a plan of attack. We have our place in the lap of God, ever aware of the divine presence in our world, secure in the divine protection, like a cat in a loving home. As we nestle in the embrace of love, our insecurities are stroked away and our strength is renewed. But this does not mean living in sleepy contentment. While our inner selves are quieted by the comforting dialogue with our Creator, love also drives us outwards into the world. In peace and at peace internally, we are free to serve others, like Paul and his companions. Living in love means seeing the world and everyone in it through the eyes of love. It means that we look at other people not as threats to us, nor even as potential fillers of the great void in our hearts, but as fellow children of a loving parent, destined to live at one with each other in the house of love. This means that we see their needs and their suffering as obstacles to their peace, which is our peace. We're compelled to help them as we look for ways to encompass them in the contentment of life with God. Living in love is having a heart filled with divine love, joy, and peace, which travels with us, even in the midst of hatred, anger, and chaos. As we trust in the God of love, we strive to live as people at peace, as bearers of peace and light into a murky world. With hearts broken as we know God's heart breaks at the wickedness and destruction unleashed on our world, we open ourselves to the calls for help and companionship. This is our life as the body of Christ, experiencing and sharing the light and love and peace of God wherever and however we are needed. May God fill us each and all with divine love and openness, that we may truly be the hands and feet and voice of Christ in this broken and suffering world. Amen.